Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly break from the real world so that I can talk to you, answer one of your questions, hopefully, about something that interests you in the ancient world of, or in the world of ancient warfare, in the ancient world of warfare. Nice. Anyway, so today's question comes from Jan, I think, Jan Willem. Jan, I'm not sure if that's a hyphenated name. Jan, I'm going to say Jan. And you, of course, can ask us a question too. You can answer in the email. Have I said that already? I might be getting confused. Anyway, you can, of course, back us on Patreon at one of three levels: Legionary, Optio, or Centurion. Jan asks, I hope it is okay for me to ask a question on another subject in the comments of this video. Yes, it is. My question is, what do we really know about ancient massed archery? How was it conducted? We may envision Hollywood-style showers of arrows raining down accurately on a target, but how realistic is this? Having done some archery myself, although many years ago, the main challenge for me is getting the distance right. And with a unit of archers several ranks deep, I wonder how those not in the front rank would be able to do that while having poor sights on the target as the men in front of them obstruct their view. Right. Okay. So probably some controversial stuff coming up when it comes to archery, and I'm sure any archers in the viewers and readers and listeners will be leaping on me. Now, you make some very good points about volley fire. We don't know about ancient volley fire. What we know is some comments about arrows blotting out the sun at the Battle of Thermopylae, at the Battle of Marathon, and others. We have all the way through to Arrian's Ectaxis in the mid-130s AD talking about the fact that he wanted to defeat the Allan cavalry enemy by his ineffable amount of shots. So there's several ideas about the large number of arrows being fired. We have the Battle of Carrhae, where the Parthians don't run out of arrows, they can be resupplied. So you've got mass amounts of archery. We don't, however, know if it's in volleys. And again, one of the things that comes up in films all the time is flight of arrows, wait, flight of arrows, wait. Now, if you are simply loosing arrows unaimed in a general direction, you are dealing with a much faster rate of fire than volley, wait, volley, wait. An archer can get rid of their arrows relatively quickly. And so that plays into the idea of blotting out the sun, that it's a blanket of arrows. However, those arrows would be exhausted very quickly. Well, where's that coming from in my brain? I tend to remember something about the capacity of ancient quivers being somewhere around 20 to 25 arrows. Where did I find that? Oh, I read that somewhere. Gosh. And so, if you're firing arrows quickly, 20 arrows isn't going to last very long. And again, from later medieval sources, if you're unaiming arrows, you're firing an arrow every 6 seconds if it's not aimed. And so that's 10 a minute. So therefore, 2 minutes of you shooting arrows, you've used your entire quiver full. Now, there is some stuff, and it's controversial, and it's only in my head, about some of the countermarches. So, for instance, one of the countermarches in the Tactica volumes is called the Persian countermarch, or the Cretan countermarch, same countermarch. The fascinating thing about that, of course, is why would you have a countermarch that's named after Persians and Cretans, who are most famous in antiquity for their archery? Now, when you jump forward to the 16th century, that description of the countermarch inspires the invention of the European countermarch, which is for volley fire of musketry. Now, and that is that the person at the front shoots, and then they go to the back and they start reloading, and then the second rank comes forward, and you basically have a continuous volley fire. If that's archery based, then is it that you go to the front of that line and you fire your 20 arrows, you go to the back where you replenish your supplies and then come forward again whilst the others are all replenishing? Maybe. Don't know. It's possible. Certainly it suggests the name, because the Macedonian phalanx obviously is not a missile army, and therefore they use a countermarch named after two archery-based enemies, which is interesting. That would, of course, allow a continuous rate of fire from the front. But again, we don't know that the ancients fired in volleys. And when you start to look at ancient archery exploits, that's a bit of a tongue twister. It's always individual archery that is emphasized, whether it be Paris or Odysseus or Teucer, or, it's individual arrow shots rather than large amounts of arrow shots. We do get, the sort of people looking like needle cushions. That's what I'm looking for. Needle cushions, is that what they're called? No, pin cushions. Looking like pin cushions in terms of the number of arrows sticking out of them. But I think that's from later. One of the things that seems to be ineffective against the Macedonians, and we've talked about the rates of casualties, very low rates of casualties against the Persians, who are an archery enemy. Is it that their reed arrow shafts are not actually able to penetrate? Do they not have penetrate? And there's obviously lots of archery videos on YouTube of the penetrating power or the lack thereof of particular arrows against particular types of armor. You've also got the various descriptions of even hoplites, standing and enduring the shafts of war. And yet at the same time, we do have archery wounds, and we do have lots of evidence of archery maintaining its place in warfare across various different cultures, even those that are not archery based. One of the famous adages in hoplite culture is that they denigrate the archer, and yet there's archers everywhere in hoplite warfare as light armed troops. So it's something that's obviously has a role on the battlefield and continues to do so. We don't have anything about the injury rates of archers. If they don't penetrate the armor, are they looking for that lucky shot to hit a gap, to hit an eye or a hand or something like that? We don't know. We do have several treatises from medical writers about how do you get arrows out of people if they're in. So that's clearly a concern, and that's Roman and Greek, so clearly a concern. And obviously, if you've got an arrow wound to the hand, you're pretty much out of business as a soldier. So that's worthwhile. And it's also something, that would be off-putting. If you're being fired at, you can't ignore that threat, even if you are well armored and the arrows can't, penetrate your armor, so to speak. You are still going to have weak points that an arrow could penetrate. You are going to be vulnerable, in the eyes and the hands and things. And so almost in a way, being in battle with arrows is going to be distracting. We don't know, for instance, if there are phases of ancient warfare, which is something that you get in games and films, and that people stopped firing when people were entering combat. We don't know about them firing over their front ranks when they joined combat. They may have. The Persians, for instance, the first man has the wicker shield and the spear and the sword. Then again, all of the archers also had spears and swords. They could fire over, even with limited or no sight lines, into the ranks of the attacking enemies, even while that front rank is engaged in sword combat or spear combat. We don't know. We're not told. It's not like Lord of the Rings where they're firing past people's ears. Definitely not. But we don't know about the trajectory either. If you look at most depictions of archers in Trajan's column, for instance, they're all firing high. They're all like this. They're not firing straight and low. They're generally firing up, which is some kind of trajectory. Again, plunging fire is not something we should really entertain for ancient warfare. It's something from later, but generally speaking, arrows are coming down on an angle, but not as steep an angle as you get in plunging fire. So there's all sorts of unanswered questions, and it's again one of the frustrations of our sources that they don't describe it in any detail that we want. They describe archery blocking out the sun, and we're meant to know what that was, because probably the people who are reading a lot of that have experienced it, so they know what it feels like and what it looks like. We do hear of raining down arrows, and that idea of rain, not just falling, but raining. That something that maybe there's something in the imagery there that we're not really sort of thinking about. So I hope that answers your question, Jan Willem. And you can join me again for another Ancient Warfare Answers, and I'll see you then. Thanks.